Hey guys, it is Monday morning. I am going to go ahead and read chapter 1. So, if you are one of those learners who do better listening than reading, perfect. I will go ahead and do that. I will also be posting chapter 2 and chapter 3. Okay? Alright, so chapter 1 is my first race. After I watched the Iditarod dogs tearing through the snow, I wanted to race Breezy around our yard, but my mom wouldn't let me. She's too old for mushing, she said. I wanted a dog that would run fast, preferably a Siberian Husky like the ones I'd seen in the Iditarod. Sometimes after my third birthday, Mom gave in to my begging. We drove to the animal shelter to look for a puppy. As we walked around the shelter, a Husky Shepherd mixed puppy named Jake watched us with bright eyes that pleaded, "I want to go home with you." His tail seemed to be wagging his body. When I reached out to pet him, he covered my hand with juicy kisses. The shelter keeper told us Jake was 17 weeks old. "He's a friendly puppy," she said, "but time is running out for him. If no one adopts him soon, he will have to be put down." I gulped at the thought, and Mom and I exchanged knowing glances. We both have a soft spot in our hearts for dogs. This was one of those times when we read each other's minds. We couldn't leave Jake to such a fate. "Let's take him," I said. Mom nodded and smiled. We paid the shelter folks $25 and brought Jake home. From then on, my favorite place to play was in our backyard with Jake. When winter came and the snow piled up, Mom bought a little plastic sled for me and a harness for Jake. Before long, he was pulling me around our yard. "You and Jake can run in the Pee-wee race in Voluntown when you're 5, Mom said. Yippee! Jake and I mushed around the backyard every day. There was snow in preparation for that big day. My plans changed, though, when Jake fell off the porch while chasing our cat and broke his leg. That ended his racing days before they officially started. Now he's a sweet old house dog. He can't mush with me, but he prances with excitement when I harness him to jogging or to pull him on my bike, a sport called bike joring. Jake's accident dashed my hopes for running my first sled dog race unless we found another dog to take his place. When I was 5, my mom volunteered at the local animal shelter, and I often went along to help. We fed and watered the dogs and picked up the poop. One morning, a purebred Siberian Husky pup was dumped at the shelter. When I saw her, it was love at first sight. I knew if she wasn't adopted within 2 weeks, she'd be put down. So I worked hard to show Mom I was responsible enough to take care of that fluffy puppy. Days passed. No one chose her. She was doomed. "Please, Mom," I begged. "Can we take her home?" Mom could see how much I loved that dog. She liked her, too. To save her life, we adopted her, and I named her Maggie. Now that I have a purebred dog, I wanted to teach her to mush. Mom searched the internet for information on sled dog racing for kids. She located a couple in Maine who made dog sleds. We drove up to Connecticut, where we were living at the time, to meet them. We learned right away that sled dog people share their passion for dogs and the sport. This couple welcomed us as though we were family, and soon we became close friends. Before long, I was calling them Uncle Alex and Aunt Lucille. They measured me for a proper racing sled. Dog sleds are different from sleds used for sliding down hills. Sleds for mushing are supported on runners that slide over the snow, kind of like what you see on those old-fashioned horse-drawn sleds. The runners extend behind the sled. That's where you stand when you run the dogs on the runners. A brake bar is built on the right rear runner where the mushers stand. It has teeth that stick down toward the snow. When the musher stands on the bar, the teeth stop the sled. The bar pops back up and out of the way when the musher moves his or her feet. The brake only works when the musher is standing on it. A brush bow curves around the front of the sled to protect it if you run into something, like a tree or a rock. Uncle Alex gave me a little book of racing terms. I already knew many of them, since I'd watched the Iditarod races on television several times. I had paid close attention to what the drivers did and how the dogs responded. It wasn't hard to figure new things out. Uncle Alex made a sled just for me. He gave it to me along with a harness, a gangline for connecting the dogs to the sled, and a snow hook. I had never seen a snow hook up close before. A snow hook is a heavy metal hook with 3 fingers, or prongs, that are each about 10 inches long. It reminds me of the clawed foot of a bald eagle. You attach it to the end of the gangline with a rope and hang it over the handle when you're running your dogs, Uncle Alex said. When you need a temporary anchor to stop the dogs, you drop it and stomp it down into the snow to make sure it folds. If the dogs pull the sled, the hook will dig deeper into the snow and keep the team from moving. He grinned and added, "If you're lucky when you drop it, it falls with the prongs downwards, sort of like a cat landing on its feet. If you are unlucky, the hook bounces up and whacks you hard." Uncle Alex showed me how to harness Maggie to my new sled. I picked up other things I needed to know on my own, like how to go around corners, mostly by trial and error. When I saw a corner coming up, I hung on tighter to the bar of the sled. I put one heel off the runner and onto the snow to slow down before I leaned into the turn. When I got around the corner, I stood up with both feet on the runners. I got better with practice, not just with taking corners, but with other mushing skills too. My mom took me to sled dog races. I listened to everything the drivers said to their dogs. I watched every move they made. I learned the commands to get the dogs to run, slow down, or stop. Mom was learning along with me. She taught me when and how to give the dogs commands. Now that I had Maggie and the proper racing equipment, I wanted to go on a real mushing trip. My grandfather, Poppy, and I made another weekend jaunt to Maine. This time we visited some of his friends who had a kennel of sled dogs. What an unforgettable weekend. Poppy's friends, I now call them Aunt Polly and Uncle Kevin, taught me that it takes more than being the best musher to win a race. It's the attitude and the actions of the dogs that determine the outcome. The driver is just along for the ride. The year I got Maggie, she and I ran in our first Pee-wee race. We raced against the clock, not against other mushers. Whoever reached the finish line in the shortest time was the winner. My mom was my coach, cheerleader, and roadie. She drove Maggie and me to the racing grounds in her pickup, unloaded my stuff, set it up, and even scooped the poop. Maggie and I competed with a boy and a girl who were running their parents' dogs. When it was time for the race to begin, Mom held on to Maggie so she wouldn't take off too soon. We 3 racers would be released one at a time in 1-minute intervals. Maggie and I were chosen to run first. I stepped on runners, put my foot on the brake, and held onto the bar. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go! I hang on tight as Mom let Maggie loose. Off we charged. Maggie and I had been racing around our backyard for 2 snowy months. This time it was different. I felt on the edge, like being almost out of control, yet comfortable at the same time. Maggie and I were running in sync. We were of one mind and with one goal. This was what I was born to do. It seemed I'd been doing it all my life. Today I experienced the same thrill when I stepped on the runners at the start of a race. Nana, my grandmother, stood at the finish line. When I hit the brake, she grabbed Maggie and helped me stop her. I earned a ribbon for running the fastest. I got a second ribbon for racing a purebred dog. In January 2004, when I was 7, Maggie and I competed in the Pee-wee class in a Connecticut Valley Siberian Husky Club race. On that clear, cold day, we ran the quarter-mile course in 5 minutes and 36 seconds. Very slow. Maggie was turning into a princess-type runner. She liked to prance about in the snow. She liked to be praised. She didn't like to run. Getting her to speed up was like trying to push a wet noodle. She lacked the will to rip through the snow, pulling me on a sled. Real sled dogs love to run. With their drive, they have accomplished heroic feats. I needed to learn to race with faster dogs if I wanted to run the Iditarod someday. The official Iditarod race honors the role of all sled dogs in Alaska's history. The trail stretches about 1,150 miles from Anchorage in south-central Alaska north to Nome on the western Bering Sea coast. In 1925, a disease called diphtheria made a lot of people sick in Nome, Alaska. An urgent request was sent to Anchorage for medicine or serum, but Anchorage was nearly 1,000 miles away. The ice on the water was too thick to send the medicine by ship. Blizzards prevented a plane from flying, so the medicine was sent by train. Deep snow stopped the train in Nenana, which is 675 miles from Nome. The only hope of getting the medicine to its final destination was by dog sled. A musher met the train, loaded the medicine on his sled, and tore off for the next checkpoint. For several days, 20 teams of speedy dogs took turns carrying the medicine across part of the trail from Nenana to Nome. Balto was the lead dog on the last leg of the run to Nome. His team carried the medicine that ended the epidemic. This serum run was but one of the reasons the Iditarod was established. Today, many sportscasters call it the last great race on Earth. I wanted a dog like Balto, who loved to run and never gave up. I got one when Mom bought me a competitive Siberian for $100. I named her Alu, after one of Balto's daughters. Like Balto's daughter Alu, my dog learned to run lead, swing, and wheel positions. As lead dog, she ran in the front of other dogs, obeyed the commands, and set the pace. As a swing dog, she backed up the leaders and helped them turn the team at my command. As a wheel dog, she ran closest to the sled and used her strength to go uphill and through heavy snow. Alu also developed a cocky personality. She would start the other dogs howling with just one bark. While we lived in Connecticut, Alu and I raced in Pee Wee events there and in Rhode Island. Most of the kids I ran against came from mushing families. I didn't. Still, I placed first, second, or third in all of my races. Mom could see I was in love with mushing. She gave up her job in Connecticut and we moved to Norway, Maine, so I would have more opportunities to race, more space for our expanding kennel, and more snow. Not long afterwards, Poppy and Nana moved to Harrison, about 15 minutes from Norway. After moving to Maine, I competed in every race I could. I soon discovered that mushing is not for sissies. Weather conditions, like icy trails, sometimes caused me to lose control. As I learned along with my dogs, I made mistakes. More than once, I crossed the finish line wearing broken glasses and a bloody sweatshirt after taking a digger, which was a nasty face-down fall, or running into a tree. In time, I graduated to a 3-dog team and began racing in the junior division, but not with Siberians. I ran short, fast 2.5 to 8.5 mile races called sprints. My team would eventually be made up of Alaskans and Eurohounds, which are a cross between Alaskan Huskies and German short-haired pointers. These dogs get me to the end of my races faster than Siberians can. From the beginning, Poppy encouraged me. He attended all my races when he didn't have to work. He helped set me up by harnessing my dogs, hitching them to the gang line, and hanging on to them so they didn't start before the signal was given. His interest in mushing was growing. Mom saw Poppy's interest and purchased a team of dogs and a sled just for him. She continued driving us to races. She cheered us on, fed the dogs, and scooped poop. She did just about everything but hop on the runners and take off with the dogs. "Why don't you get on the runners?" Poppy asked her several times. Mom shrugged. She considered herself a girly girl, not the outdoor type. One day, after Poppy had finished hooking up his dogs for a run, he said to her, "Just stand on the runners." Mom gave in. "This is pretty nice," she said. "Okay," Poppy said. "Have fun!" He released the dogs, and they bolted. Mom screamed and grabbed the bar. Her long blonde hair was the last thing we saw of her as the dogs disappeared down the trail. She returned with sparkling eyes and a smile that reached from one ear to the other. "You want a team, don't you?" Poppy said. "Yeah," she answered. Now all 3 of us are mushers. We're members of the Down East Sled Dog Club and the New England Sled Dog Club. We compete in the same events. I run in the junior classes, but next year I am moving up to race in the pro division with the adults. The 3 of us swap dogs according to how their abilities and personalities match what we need for each race. That helps us each build better teams. Sometimes we compete against each other. It's fun though, not dog eat dog. My mom is getting pretty good on the runners. In January 2009, she placed second in the 4-dog sportsman division at the Moose River Run in Jackman, Maine, just a whisker ahead of Poppy. Guess who ran as her wheel dog? It was my old dog, Alu. So, see what I started? That's chapter 1.